Hi everyone. Good morning. How are you all?
Good morning, Upma.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
So, guys, we'll start with a quick introduction. My name is Upama Datta, and I am
Hi
working
guys,
in this.
good morning. We will start
Hi.
in next
Yeah.
5 minutes. People are still joining, so we will take 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Reenu, the admission manager at Merit Shot, and I am excited to welcome you all to today's masterclass. We are joined by a remarkable speaker, Upma Datta, former Deloitte professional with 5+ years of industry experience. Today, she'll be breaking down some of the most powerful concepts in finance, how companies go public, how major deals are structured, and the real skills that matter in investment bank. In this session, you'll learn what really happens behind the scene of an IPO, the key steps involved in merger and acquisitions, real case based insight from industry experience, the essential skills you need to build a successful career in investment bank. Let's get started and make the most of this learning opportunity. Over to you, Upma.
Hi, thank you, Renu. So, as I was just talking about myself, that I'm in this industry for last 5+ years, and have worked with a few consultant firms and boutique investment banks as well. So, as I was saying, that when you join as an analyst, your role is quite different, and when you reach to a senior level position, that becomes much more difficult and much more deal oriented. So, I will start with maybe a quick introduction from you all. So, if anyone wants to introduce themselves, they can just unmute themselves and talk, like what they are doing right now, how they have this passion towards IB, and who wants to. Yes.
Hello everyone.
Hi.
Good morning to all. I am just keeping myself learning in the finance in a security market and gaining knowledge from last 4 to 5 years and investing in different stocks, analyzing the fundamental and technical, and accordingly I do the investment.
Great.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Hi everyone. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes, Sandeep.
I'm a legal consultant at Lex Resolve, and I'm from legal background, and I'm also interested in merger and acquisition due diligence and compliance. That's why I've joined the course.
Okay. Anyone else who would like to, introduce themselves or?
Hey, hello everyone. Good morning. Akash Patankar this side. So I have total years of 3.5 years of experience in investment banking, debt settlement, and swift payment, trade reconciliation. So I'm looking forward to gain more depth knowledge in core finance to work as a front end office. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you, Akash. So, guys, I will share a PPT which I, prepared for this session. So, let me know when you can, see this screen.
Yeah.
See, we as an investment banker, our most important job is to, act as the middleman between your client and the investors. So, say for example, if you are working on a fundraising deal, so in that case, your client might want to raise, say, fund for VC funding, Series A, Series B, Series C plus, or maybe they are willing to go for an pre-IPO or IPO. So, in all the cases, you as an investment banker, your role is to act as a middleman, without whom the process is incomplete. They can't do the entire process, because most of the founders, they don't have a lot of idea about finance. Okay, they are doing the business, and that is all for them. So the most important role of you as an investment banker is to support your founder in all the ways possible. Now, like whenever you are doing a fund, so how it happens, you have to talk, or you have to pitch on the behalf of your owners to in front of the investors. So you have to take this ownership, and you have to close the deal as well. After closing the deal, then you can ask for a commission or whatever. There are different fee structure that the investment bankers do follow, but this is the overall role which an IB or an investment bank. So I will go one by one. So say for example, the first thing is, like, in case of fundraising, what are the options are there that is possible for for fundraising. So one is the equity fundraising, which is the most common thing. So in equity fundraising also we have different types. So say for example, if you are doing it in case of startups, then you have to focus more on angel investors, HNI funding and VC funding. But if you are doing it for a more matured company, then you have to focus on private equity investors or pre-IPO investors. So is this clear till now? Like what are the options of fundraising case of?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So going forward, the M&A part. So in M&A part, we have again two types. One is buy side M&A, one is sell side M&A. So I have acted both. So I was there for one industry. It is a company that used to manufacture packaging materials and all, and they were looking to acquire 3 companies, mostly for their forward integration. So do you people know what is forward integration and backward integration? Anyone?
Forward integration is when a company acquires its own customers. So let's say we have an auto insulators company which is now maybe entering an auto market. That would be a forward integration. Backward integration is the opposite of this one. When a company actually acquires its suppliers, that would be called backward integration.
Right. So this company was basically focusing on forward integration, and we have helped them to acquire 3 companies of 300 crore each. So their total top line. So what is top line, guys? Top line is a basic terminology that we use in investment banking. When someone is asking you that what is the top line of your client, that means they are asking the revenue of that client. So the top line means what is the revenue of your client. So we helped that company to acquire 300 crore companies each, 3 companies where the top line was around 550 crore. So guys, there is one thing you should know, that when you are doing a valuation, we will come to that part. So as an investment banker, your role is to work on pitch deck. Your role is to work on financial modeling. So when you are joining a company as an analyst, your focus will be more on analytical part. You have to go through the financial statements of the company. You have to do the financial statement analysis like comparison, peer analysis and all. Then you have to work on the pitch deck. That is the CIM we call, confidential information memorandum. Then you work on the financial model. So in financial model also we have different types. We have DSCF, we have comparable comps, we have transaction comps. So all these are different types of model that are being used by the investment bankers. Apart from this, then the third step is very important, that is the listing of investors. So when you are going to raise fund for your company, you have to prepare a list of the investors whom you have to reach out. So for example, if you are looking for a fundraising for a startup focused on fintech, then your first criteria while you are looking for the investors list is that the VC funds who invest in fintech, first criteria. Second is the startups usually go for a lower check size. Check size is the investment amount. So that may be $5 million to $15 million or something like that. Now say for your case, your startup is looking for $10 million. Then in that case, you have to look for particular VC fund who does this investment into fintech, and the check size is also matching with their criteria. Third criteria might be that the startup in whom you are helping, they might be in their pre-seed area. So in that case, we have to also look for this criteria, that the VC funds who invest in fintech, who does this $10 million check size, and who invest in pre-seed startups as well. So these are the criteria which you need to jot it down before you are looking for a investors list. So this is very important, because this will give you a feedback on the presentation or the model which you have prepared and all. So after you are done with this investors presentation, in few investment banks they have CRMs through which you can send bulk emails. But where I used to work as an analyst, I was told that for every investment, when you are sending that pitch or when you are sending that financial model to any investor, you should relate to that particular investor. For example, what we used to do, we used to mention in the email that what are the criteria that we are looking for. Every criteria is matching you. Say for example, we are reaching out to VCA. So for VCA, we used to write that all these criteria are matching in your case. Also, you have already invested in a couple of fintech startups, and we used to mention that portfolio from their website. So if you open any VC fund website, you will see a portfolio section where they mention what are the companies they have already invested in. So we used to go to their company website and check for each and every company that whether we have relevant fintech startups in their website or not. If they have, then we used to mention that as well to customize that email much more relevant, much more related to that particular VC. Guys, always remember, cold emails will only work when you are trying to make it customized cold email. So when you are reaching out to the investors, you are sending emails to say 100 plus investors. But each and every investor should feel that you as an investment banker is reaching out to them in a customized way. So for this, we use CRM websites and all, like there is HubSpot, there is Zoho. So these things you can use to send out this email. After this, we used to get, reply from the investors. We have to set up calls with the senior investment bankers. They used to pitch. Then, there had been a Q&A session when the investors would like to meet the founders. They want to understand much more details about the startup. So before that, we used to sign one NDA. Anyone here who knows what is an NDA?
Yeah, it's non-disclosure agreement wherein we have to sign the rules and regulations of the company, whatever it is, and
Right.
we should not disclose whatever it's out of the market, like out of
Right.
the organization.
Right. So basically, NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. We have to sign this with the client once when we are promising our client that whatever financial data you are sharing with us, it will be confidential with us only. Okay. And then we have to sign one NDA with the investors before sharing these financials with them. Because say, for example, if you share the financials to investor A and going through it, the investor might feel that, it is not of a very interesting opportunity for them and they drop the plan. They can do it. But if they are not signing an NDA, they are not bound to confidence. So what they can do, they might discuss this with other investors network and all, and which I don't want and my client doesn't want. So as a result of which we sign an NDA with them that even if you are not interested in this deal in future days, you are not allowed to share this with your network or in the market publicly. Is that clear till this, guys, everyone?
So sharing an NDA is a mandatory kind of thing?
Yes. So there are two things which are very much mandatory. First thing is when we are signing one client on board. So as I was saying that when you are analyst, your job starts with, pitch deck presentation and all. Sorry, pitch deck preparation and all. But when you are working as a senior investment banker or maybe AVP, VP, in that case, your role changes. How the role changes? Now your task is more on deal origination rather than deal execution. Because now you have to focus more on business development purpose. So in that case, one of the most important document which we need to sign, that is the mandate. So equity mandate, we call it equity or debt mandate. So equity mandate is basically where the client is accepting your terms and conditions. You are giving a lot of terms and conditions there. You are talking about the fee structure. So there are two types of fees which are usually very relevant in the IB industry. That is one success fees and one is retainer fees. So what is a success fees, guys? Anyone here who knows what is a success fee and what is a retainer fees? So success fees is basically, guys, when yes.
Hello.
Ishaq.
The one which you get once, there's a relevant required outcome that you have gotten.
After the
kind of
deal
one
closed.
is one that you have,
Right.
that is what you get paid as long as you're working on it. This implies on law firms as well. It's a common concept there as well.
Correct. So success fees is the fees which we get it when the deal is closed. Only when the deal is closed, you will get the success fees. And that is usually a commission-based deal. For example, if I'm saying that if you are able to close the deal, 5% commission I will take of the entire deal value. So if the company is, say, raising 1 crore, so 5% of it will be my commission as success fees. And retainer fees is when you are signing the mandate, you might ask for a retainer fees. For example, if within 6 months, yes, Ishaq. You haven't
you
now?
can
Yes.
complete. It's okay. You can complete. We can begin later.
So as I was saying, that retainer fees is something when you are telling your client that if within 6 months your deal is not getting closed, so to retain us as your investment banker, you have to pay us some fees. This is the retainer. This usually we as investment bankers have it in our fee structure because to maintain the cash flow in our firm. Because see, you can't promise your client that I will close this deal within 6 months. No, you can't do that. You can't overcommit because you don't know the financials of that company. You will only get to know the details when you get to the more like details in the annual report and all. Not annual report, audit report and all. So in that case, you can't overcommit. What you have to tell them that see, I will try to do my best. I will try to close this deal within say 6 months. But if I can't, then to retain me as your investment banker, you have to pay this much of fees per month or whatever can be the terms and conditions. So everything will be mentioned in the mandate and the client will sign it. You will sign it as the investment banker. So this is the first document that is being signed and that is being shared between the client and the investment banker. Once the mandate is signed, we sign one NDA with the client. And then we get all the financials, we sit with the management team, we work on the pitch deck, financial model, everything is done. And then we start the investors reach out. So right now the role I am, we organize investors roadshow. So how a roadshow is happening, say for example, I'm working for a solar EPC company. So for that company, I am helping them to raise 50 crore of pre-IPO. And by FY27, they are planning for an IPO of 1300 crores. So right now, whatever we are doing for that company, so that company is based out of Jaipur and we are organizing road shows in Mumbai and Jaipur. So in Mumbai, why? Because most of the private equity investors are based out of Mumbai. So what we are doing, we are organizing one place. Okay, we are inviting all the private equity investors who invest in solar companies and all, and then our founder who is going to pitch to these investors. So also guys, as investment bankers, we help the clients also to do mock pitches, because as I said, the founders mostly they don't know how to pitch, how to convince the investors and all. So we help them to do mock pitches. And since we have been a part of a lot of investor roadshows, investor pitches, so we know what kind of questions can come from investor. So we prepare them for those kind of questions and answer. How they should address any concern coming from investor. If they don't know any answer, how they can address that kind of clarification within the call. So all these things we help them to do mock pitches. So these are all part of a senior investment banker, which you will get to do when you reach maybe senior or AVP or VP. Before that, as I mentioned, that it will be mostly on analytical part. So is the role of investment banker clear for you guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. So now I will just move to the next. So see, these are the key verticals in investment banking domain. So when we say investment banking, people mostly think about fundraising and IPO or M&A. But apart from this, we have some other departments as well. First is debt capital market, that is DCM. So one company might go for a fundraising, which can be a mixture of both debt and equity. So you as an investment banker have to work on both. You can't say that I will work on equity only. Mostly, in case of VC fund, we have another type of fund in the market, that is venture debt. Are you people aware of that? What is venture debt? So venture debt is, guys, similar to venture capital. Debt is basically when the company is giving you debt, which can be convertible into equity, that is CCD, compulsory convertible debt. And there is another, that is NCD, that is non-convertible debt. So when I'm saying that company, there are venture debt firms like Alteria is a very big venture debt fund. We are dealing with Alteria right now. So they give NCD. Basically, bank loan, how the bank loan works, this also works in the same way. But the only basic difference between these two, why people go for venture debt and not for bank loan, first is a good venture debt presence in your capital structure can help you get a good valuation in future. First. Second thing is, even though the bank loan percentage will be little lower than the venture debt percentage, but the venture debt people offer you a lot of flexibility. Like in bank loan, you have to go through a lot of documentation, income tax, GST, everything. So venture debt give you a little flexibility there. They tell you that if you want 10 crore, I will give you 3 crore right away. Okay, but say not 10%, I would say 13-14% interest rate. And then they might say you that going forward, if you are able to achieve say 10 crores of revenue in the next 3 quarters, then I will give you more 4 crores. So like this is called the tranches. So we tell them that you will get your fundraising in tranches. So each tranche there will be some condition. If you are able to achieve that condition, then you will get the funding as well. Is this clear? What is the difference between bank loan and venture debt? Yes, guys? If you didn't understand.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So after this debt capital market, we have private equity and VC, which we already discussed. Then there is equity research. So equity research, I think someone here who was talking about that they are working in securities market. So they might be knowing of this thing, that what is an equity research. Basically, equity research report, there are companies who issue this, Motilal Oswal, all the brokerage firms mostly. So ICICI Securities will also have their equity research department. In this, what they do, they pick up companies, they do an entire fundamental analysis of this company, and they issue a report on the same, recommending buy or sell. So when you as an investment banker, you are working on pitch decks, you need to talk about total available market, right guys? The TAM, SAM and SOM. Anyone here who knows what the concept of TAM, SAM, SOM?
No, please explain.
So TAM is basically, guys, total available market. TAM is the service available market, and SOM is the service obtainable market. So for example, this is the 1 minute, I'm not able to. So say for example, this is the TAM. So whatever product, say product A, you are selling product A. So for this, your total available market, that is entire India, the entire market that is available for this particular product might be 100 crore. But sir, your client is operating in say 2-3 states, say Maharashtra, Gujarat and Rajasthan. Okay. So your SAM becomes a little less. That is your service available market, say 80 crore. Now, your client is operating in 3-4 states. Say in Maharashtra, it is operating in Mumbai and Pune. In Gujarat, it is operating in Ahmedabad. In Rajasthan, it is operating in Jaipur and Udaipur. So the service obtainable market becomes a little less again. So this is my TAM, this is my SAM, and this is my SOM. So which might be around 35 crore, say. So this is the data which will be available in this kind of equity research report, DRHPs of the company. This is we called industry analysis. So whenever you are going to talk about the fundraising of any company, you have to give an idea to the investor that what is the market size that is available to my client to grab. So when I'm saying my investor that my client has a TAM of 100 crore. So investor will first ask you the question that how are you going to achieve that? You are already operating in 2-3 states in India, but you are talking about that you will grab the entire market in India. How are you planning to do that? So if you have a justification for that, you can say that, I'm doing a forward integration to have a better, strong logistics. You can say that I am developing my online presence in other cities. That is fine. But if you are not planning such things, if you are just focusing on these 3 states only and to expand also in these 3 states, then you have to talk about the SAM, which is like these 3 states, Rajasthan, Gujarat and Maharashtra is having say 80 crore and my market is 35 crore. And I'm planning to reach larger market share in this 80 crore as well. So this is how you can talk about the industry analysis. And in this case, this equity research reports, this DRHPs, and I will talk about DRHP later on. What is a DRHP? These things are very important. So now do you people understand what is TAM, how this equity research report things work and all?
Yes, Upama, got it.
So I will just go back again. expected. Then comes the wealth management. It is one of the most popular sectors in investment banking. This is basically you are doing the portfolio management. If you remember, I just told you that when it comes to startup, we focus on mostly on VC funding and HNI funding. Now these people who are HNI full form, anyone here who knows?
High net worth individual.
Sorry, Akash, I didn't get you.
High net worth individuals.
Yes, high net worth individuals. So people who have a lot of money, actually, these people are called HNIs, and they are investing to expand their wealth. So these people hire investment bankers. They are called portfolio managers, and they manage their portfolio. They decide where to invest this person money. So when we as investment bankers have to reach out to HNI people, we have to reach out to their portfolio managers. If you people know here that there is Shraddha Kapoor, Ranbir Kapoor, these people are now investing a lot in startups. Alia Bhatt, Katrina Kaif, all these people are investing in a lot of startups. So how they are doing this? They don't have any idea. So they are hiring portfolio managers who do this on their behalf. So this is also a very popular sector in IB, which is growing right now. Is it clear, guys? All the verticals?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have one question over here.
Yes.
The role and the responsibilities of a fund manager and a portfolio manager is one and the same, or is a different one?
Fund manager is related to mutual funds. That is different.
Okay. Yeah.
So I will give an idea about that as well. So in big in like banks, so HDFC, Axis Bank, they have
AMC,
their own
AMC, right?
mutual funds. Yes, AMC. So
Okay.
fund manager's role is much more relevant there rather than being a portfolio manager. So what is their role? They are taking a pool of investments. What is the concept of basically mutual fund? And they're investing that in a lot of companies to make the highest return of that. So that
Correct.
they can return that investment to the investors as well and generate the return for the company as well. So fund manager is mostly related to that.
Okay.
Yes. Any other doubt, guys? Anyone? I think few people joined later on. I see the number has increased. So anyone here who wants me to go through anything, because anything, then I will just do it and then I will move forward. No, okay. This is the equity capital market, guys, where I am mostly working in. One is IPO, guys. IPO, you all people know, initial public offering, when a private company sells shares to the public for the first time in the market. So, I have played two roles, guys, so I will just share the experience here. When I was working in Deloitte, my role was into management consulting. So there, what I was doing, basically, the companies who are going live for IPO, we used to give them end-to-end business consulting. Now, what does it include? It basically includes how your capital structure should be. So when you are going for an IPO, maybe has a different set of guidelines for you. So, according to those guidelines, we used to give them consulting. For example, if the profitability of any company is relatively lower than its other competitors, so in that case, what we used to do, we used to give them consulting that first try to focus on your revenue generation. First, improve your revenue. First, improve your gross margin percentage, and then you start preparing for your IPO. Because if you are having a low profitability, even if you go for an IPO, you will not get the desired valuation that you are looking for. So this is the role of a management consultant, guys. There is a very thin line between consulting and IB. And I have worked in both. So consulting will give you the consultation only. And as an investment banker, your role will be, along with giving consulting, you will complete the entire process. You getting me? What is the difference? So this is the... Yes, Sandeep?
Ma'am, can you repeat it?
Yes, sure. So I was saying that there is a very thin line between the consulting and the IB jobs. So in consulting, what we used to do, give the consultation to the clients only. That do all these things, then you go for an IPO. But in case of investment bankers, here what we are doing is basically we are giving the consultation and we are also executing the process. So this is the basic difference between a consultant and an IB. Is this clear, Sandeep?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, guys, FPOs are mostly further public offerings. That is when a company has already went like for IPO first time, they're already in the market and they want to issue further shares in the market. That time it is called further public offerings. Then there is QIP, that is qualified institutional placement. This is a capital raising mechanism where the listed companies issues shares or convertible securities to institutional buyers. Can anyone here tell me what is institutional buyers and all?
These are the big investors who invest in the particular stocks.
Right.
These can be AMCs or mutual funds as well, because these are
Correct.
institutional investors, and it can also be UHNIs or family offices from different firms.
Right. Very good. Yes, someone is saying some.
I have a small doubt.
Yes.
That is in FPO, the shares offers for only public, right?
Yes.
And in QIP, it is not for public. It's only for the
No.
big institutional.
Right.
not?
Yes, for big institutions. So before going public, few companies go for QIP as well.
Because the public can't buy these shares from the QIP.
No, until and unless you are issuing an IPO, it is not possible for public to invest. Yes. So guys, in M&A, as I was talking, can anyone tell me what is a buy side and what is a sell side M&A? What is the difference between these two? No one?
Buy side and sell side basically pertains to acquisitions, not in mergers. Buy side advisory in case of acquisition would be the company which is acquiring someone else, and sell side would be the company that is being sold to someone else, basically.
Right. So you as an investment banker, when you are playing the role of a buy side and when you are playing the role of a sell side, can you give me the difference of, perspective and all? Can you tell me how you are going to act differently? Because you have to, if you are working in an investment bank, there will be both the cases coming. So there will be buy side M&As as well, sell side as well. So you have to act for both of them. Like both of them, I mean like in separate deals, not in one deal. So you might be acting as a investment banker for one buy side deal and one sell side deal. So can you tell me, Harshal, what is the difference there? How are you going to differentiate between the two?
So on buy side, first I would like to clarify that there might be two types of buyers: strategic or completely financial return based. So if it's a strategic buyer, we might need to look into what exactly they are looking for in a company, and then we might need to identify the targets that we might want to buy.
Right.
And then we would like to get the best pricing for our client so that he can get the most out of those returns as well. And if it's a financial institution that is on the buy side, the sole focus would be on generating the highest returns in the upcoming years. And again, these would be very similar to private equity buy. And
Right.
again, the focus would be on companies where the operations or the financial structure can be improved to generate very high returns on the deployed capital.
Very good. So guys, who knows the difference between strategic investor and financial investor? Can anyone tell me? See, say for example, if my company is into, say, what should I say? Solar, say fintech. Okay. So if I'm looking for a financial investor, that means I am looking for either VC funding or private equity. These people just give you money and they want return after some period of time. These are called finance. But when it comes to strategic investors, guys, they will give you money along with some other operational efficiency input as well. So basically, some other fintech company, say PhonePe or say Paytm, these people are your strategic investors if you are a fintech startup looking for a fundraising. Are you getting the difference? So they will give you money, but they will also help you in your operational efficiency and all. If you have ever, any one of you have watched Shark Tank? Yeah. So in Shark Tank, if you remember, the sharks often used to say that I have expertise in, say, branding or marketing. I can help you with that. So that is one of the strategic investor who is saying you that they have that idea of that particular industry. They can help you to grow more along with the investment as well. But financial investor only will provide you investment and they want their return. Is this clear, the difference between financial and strategic investor?
Means a strategic means one of the guy have aspect that how from that way how can they improve, so that will be the
Right.
strategy. Financial means they doesn't know anything about the aspect and how it will be grow, just they have a fund and from that they want to get return.
The thing is that doesn't know is not the right term. They knows about the industry, the sector and all, but they are not very willing to help you in operational part. Their focus is on short-term basis. So this is another point. Angel investors usually invest in your startups for a short period of time. So they want their money back by say 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. But when a strategic investor usually comes on your board, they will be focusing much more on your long-term growth. So that is also another difference. Now, is it making sense for everyone, guys?
Yes.
Okay. So, as Harshal said, that in case of buy side, my role is to select the target based on the criteria, geographical criteria, financial criteria, business line, valuation, peers analysis, all these things, and I will do my buy side analysis. And when it's a sell side analysis, I first need to understand whether it's a strategy, whether it's a 100% acquisition or not. If yes, then what is the reason for that acquisition? Because when one person wants to sell off its company, the first question these buyers ask is that why do you want to sell your company? Because if there is anything like in case of profitability or there is a distressed company, then the investors will give a second thought that why this company wants to sell it off. In case of buy side, when you are buying a target, you have to also have a very keen focus on the M&A, on the synergy part. Like for what reason you should buy this company? Because if you are buying something that should give you some benefit in the long term. So that long-term benefit, we call it synergy in case of M&A. Is this clear? So this is a very important term in case of M&A, that is the synergy. What is synergy, guys? Synergy is basically the rationale for which the M&A is going to happen, or their joint venture can also happen, but there should be some benefit coming out of that JV or that M&A. Is that clear for everyone? Do you want me to, go through the synergy part again, or is it clear for everyone?
Can you
Yeah,
please
but-
make it again for a while?
Yes.
Sure. So synergy is basically when, for example, Zomato. Okay. Zomato acquired District app. You all know. Or Zomato acquired Grofers and renamed it to Blinkit. Can any one of you tell me why Zomato did that?
In my opinion, that transaction happened because Zomato and Grofers basically had a similar model but different product. So they could deploy the same infrastructure, IT infrastructure, as well as their distribution platform for a separate business, and that helped them save on some money in a combined business.
Yes, but another reason is there. Zepto was growing. So Zepto came with a very new idea that I will deliver goods to your doorstep within minutes. And Zomato wanted to enter into that market. Zomato already had the delivery chain ready. So what it did, Grofers was doing the same thing, like sending delivery of goods and all, but not like Zepto. It used to take like 5-6 days to get the things delivered to your home. So what Zomato thought, that I have the delivery chain ready, Grofers has the warehouse ready, so we can combine this both and we can be a competitor of Zepto, which they are right now. Right, guys? So this is the synergy I am talking about. Whenever you are buying something, you are looking for something. There are another example I can give you. You people remember when Microsoft acquired Nokia? Can anyone tell me why that deal happened? What was the synergy behind that?
At that point, Microsoft was targeting to compete with Google's Android. So they acquired Nokia to basically further their mobile operating system with the help of Nokia brand, because Nokia was already a known cell phone manufacturer brand, and Microsoft wanted to push their own OS onto it. So that was one of the reasons.
Another reason from the perspective of Nokia was, at that point of time, Nokia was struggling to survive in the market with the new and very fascinating models of Samsung. So Nokia was struggling in that period to have the largest market share. what it used to have. So when Microsoft approached Nokia that we want to acquire you and we want to launch a new product, that I think some Lumia, some product name which they came in the market of Lumia, something like that. So
I remember.
yes, so they came into the market. So the reason why Microsoft acquired Nokia is to use the customer base of Nokia, to relaunch Nokia, and third, to have their entry into the market. Nokia used that opportunity to survive and to revive in the market. Now, is it making sense, guys? What is synergy?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
The thing, guys, in case of M&A, there are two types of takeover. One is a friendly takeover and one is a hostile takeover. So friendly takeover is the case where both the people are ready to, where both the people are ready to get acquired and all. Hostile takeover is a place or is a M&A where the buyer is forcefully buying the target. Can anyone tell me a recent example on this hostile takeover?
L&T and Mindtree.
Yes, yes. A very known example is Elon Musk buying Twitter. It was a hostile takeover. You remember, guys, when Elon Musk first approached Twitter, they didn't want to sell it off, right? So they had so many tactics they used to keep Elon Musk away. But Elon Musk finally did it. So that is a different thing. So this is the two types of takeover as well, guys. Is this clear? Are the examples making sense?
Yes.
Everyone understands? Okay. So now, guys, when we are talking about M&A, the third part is deal structuring, which I think Harshal explained in a very good way. When you are talking about the deal structuring, you should understand the synergies, whether you should go for a financial or a strategic investor, why you are looking for this and that. So all these becomes a part of your deal structure. And the last part is the due diligence and valuation, which is a very important role you as an investment banker. Let me give you an example. Say, for example, Harshal is the buyer and I am the seller. I have one investment banker, Harshal has one investment banker. Okay. I want to sell myself, obviously at a higher cost, because I will want that my valuation will be higher. Say 15 crore is 150 crore I want when I want to sell myself off. Okay. Now when Harshal wants to buy me, Harshal will, as a buyer, he will try to negotiate. So if I'm saying that 150 crore I want, he will say, no, I will give you 100 crore. Now, our investment bankers, like Harshal's investment banker and my investment banker, will have a negotiation phase where they will arrive at a range. Now, say you are saying 100, I am saying 150. We arrived at 120 to 130, and then the deal was locked. So this is one of the very important role of you as an investment banker when these kind of deals are going on, because as Harshal was talking, that it is your responsibility to give your client the best valuation in the market. Is it clear, guys? The role, how we are helping our client and all?
Understood.
Yes, ma'am. Understood.
Okay. So debt capital market, what I was talking about, bonds and NCDs and all, this I have already covered. Now, guys, what is IPO?
Upma, I just wanted to ask one thing, like in deal structuring, don't we also focus on the funding of the deal? Like how is it going to be funded?
Like, is it going to be equity, entire equity? How many, what will be the share price? And if you are going to, like if it's a sell side M&A, mostly it happens in tranches. So say for example, for the first 6 months, I will pay you this, then this, then this. So these all things are mentioned in the deal structure.
Okay.
Even the deal transition also, no? Which is LBO, MBO,
Yes,
LBO.
yes. Yes, someone is saying something? Okay. So IPO, guys, you people already know. That's when I already explained also a little bit. So we'll try to go for, why do companies go public? So these are the 4 very possible cases. So in like, apart from these 4, can anyone add on something? Do you think like there is any other reason for what companies go for IPO? Any other reason do you think that is important? First is the capital for expansion, right? They want to raise capital for expanding. Second is provide exit to your existing investors. So if your investors are PE investors and all, they are usually looking for an exit. And this exit is always like in 9 cases, this exit is done through IPO. When your company will list for IPO, the investors, the private equity investors will sell off their shares at a higher price and they will exit your company. That is to increase the brand credibility, which means when your company is going for an IPO, that means the people who are going to invest in that company are now very sure that SEBI has done all the regulatory processes, all things are checked, the company is in compliance, and I can, what should I say? I can trust on the credibility of the brand. Third is improve governance, which means when you are going for IPO, you have to go through a lot of, due diligence steps. There are 2-3 types of diligence, like one is financial FDD, we call it. Then there is legal due diligence, that is LDD. So going all through these 2 processes will ensure and improve your governance and your compliance in the company. So before going to an IPO, I was working on one company in Surat. So their DRHP has just been filed. The name of the company is Sakhya Skin Clinic. So in that company, DRHP, I was helping the team. So there, the entire structure of the company was restructured. Like the hierarchy of the organization, everything was planned again. New people were, hired. So their financial statements were reclassified. Everything is done from start to end. And after you submit the DRHP, now I will tell you what is a DRHP. Can you guys tell me what is a red herring prospectus? Do you people know what is a red herring prospectus?
It's basically a document that a company releases like before going public for IPO. It provides you the basic details about the company, their workings, the working model, about the management, current shareholding, and also the financials.
So red herring prospectus is, you can say, a brochure. Saying that you will decide as an investor whether you want to invest in that company or not. DRHP is the draft of that red herring prospectus. So how the process goes, I will come to that detail. The process goes for the approval of DRHP. So once you make the DRHP and you file that with SEBI, SEBI takes a couple of months' time to go through all the points which you have mentioned. We'll send you questions. I have seen SEBI sending 500, 600 questions. So first time we got like around 300 questions. We were preparing the answer to those questions and we send it back to SEBI. And within a day, we got another set of questions, new questions, not the follow-up questions. So after you answer all these questions and you satisfy SEBI's concern, then only SEBI will approve your DRHP. And then you will file for your IPO and you will your RHP will be public. People can have access to that. DRHP also you can have access to. If you want, you can go and check any recent companies DRHP, Lenskart, and there is Physics Wallah. I think Physics Wallah filed their DRHP confidentially. That also companies can do. So before going public, they want to keep their DRHP confidential. That can also be done. Once and only when the SEBI will approve it, you will have access to their RHP. So this is a DRHP, guys. Any doubt till this?
Upma, I want to ask something about
Yeah.
that investor exit way. So there is only way
Sorry,
to exit.
just a
Yeah.
minute. What did you say?
Is there only way to exit investors through the IPO, or there is another way? If SEBI rejected
Other
for the
ways-
IPO listing, so how can investor get exit?
Other ways are also available. Just we discussed about QIPs and all. But IPO is the most safest way for the investors to exit.
And in case IPO not get listed, that SEBI get rejected for the IPO. So how the investor can exit from there?
If the IPO gets rejected, the company has 6 months time to refile their DRHP. They can do that. So that is possible. Otherwise, they can go for QIP investment. So in that case, the investors, if not, then the investors have to wait. And if some investor has, have waited like till the IPO is getting listed and all, there is a 6 months lock-in period. Like within 6 months, that particular investor cannot sell off its share. So that is also there. So the investor has to wait. Yes.
So this 6 months is for all the categories like SMEs or
No,
main board.
no. Those who have invested in the IPO as well, like those who have not sold off their shares before the IPO has listed. In the IPO ecosystem, guys, this is the visual overview of the participants. Now, anyone here who can tell me, investment bankers, we already know, but still I will just give you a brief. That is the most important part in this entire circle. It starts with this. So it's basically helping the client. So as I was talking about consulting and IB, I would just give you a real life example here how it happens. So there is one company based out of Jaipur, for which I did their pre-IPO of 50 crore. I was talking about that company few minutes back as well. So that company is going to file their IPO in FY27 for a number say 1300 crore. So before this, before the pre-IPO, the company was having EBITDA percentage of 4% and PAT around 2%, okay, which is comparatively lower than its competitors who are having same kind of revenue. So the company was having revenue of 450 crore in FY25 and their EBITDA was 4% and PAT was 2%. But in same sector, there are other participants as well, like other competitors as well, like KPI Green Energy, Oswald Pumps, Shakti Pumps. These are its companies. So they were having EBITDA of 6% and PAT of around 4.5 in the like financials. So what we did, we first consulted them to improve their operational efficiency. So what we found out, first we found out that they used to have 7 manufacturing facilities, okay, separate manufacturing facilities, all within one zone, maybe within 2 kilometers, 1.5 kilometers. And what they were doing, they were hiring thousands of hydras, okay, per month, just to facilitate that transportation from one facility to second facility. So that was increasing their labor charges and transportation charges, which are their direct expenses to a huge extent. That is why their gross margin percentage was little lower than the competitors. First, we suggested them that set up one integrated manufacturing facility that will have the entire process in one place. That will save a lot of your money. Consulting we did. Then second, we saw that company was taking raw materials through channel financing. Anyone here who knows what is channel finance?
Supply chain finance.
Right. So there basically what happens, if you are going for a bank loan to acquire these raw materials, there is a huge lot of documentation and process going on, even though the rate of interest is low. But these people wanted flexible payment system, easy documentation, easy loan procurement. So that's why they went to channel financing. So these channel financing people will provide you all this flexibility, but they will charge you a higher rate of interest. So that is one of the reasons that their PAT margins are very low. So we suggested them either go for a fundraising round where you will take money from investors to prepare to set up an integrated manufacturing facility. That will be your capex, and you will take some money for your working capital needs. That will be your opex. Anyone here who knows the difference between capex and opex?
Capex is like capital expenditure on plant, machinery, equipment, or things like that. And
Right.
OPEX is like normal day-to-day expenditure on rent or
Correct.
salaries, market.
Yes, very good. So capex is basically capital expenditure which we are doing in order to get a benefit for more than a longer period of time. And OPEX is basically our working capital needs, that is day-to-day operations. So they raised 50 crore, among which 35 crore was their capex. 15 crore we suggested them to have their working capital. So this is the consulting and IB going side by side. So when you are working on boutique investment banks, you will do both of this. And now we are helping them. Their pre-IPO is almost done. By December end, we will be closing the investment round. From January onwards, we are planning for their IPO. So in this process, I will tell you what all we are doing. Before that, just let me tell you what are the types of IPO. First is the fresh issue, that the company issues new funds to the market. And second is offer for sale. Someone was talking about the exit of the investors. So this is how the investors can have their exit. The existing investors can sell their market shares in the market to the public. Third can be a combination, that is a mix of both. This usually happens when the company is already in the market, but if the company is first time coming into the market, it is mostly fresh issue. Is this clear, guys, for everyone?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now this is like 2019 till 2023, there was a data which was saying that the valuation has increased over the years for IPO. This is a very important step, that what we do as in IPO. So first is that what I was talking about, the kickoff meeting. So understanding the business, what funds required, how much should be the fund allocation. Fund allocation meaning the use of funds basically. Yes, as I mentioned that in the 50 crore, 35 was my capex and 15 was my opex. So similarly, you have to decide the IPO amount which you are raising, what will be the utilization of that fund. And then the process will be IPO readiness. So IPO readiness, as I mentioned, all the processes which we do, going through the financial statements. If there are related party transactions, we address them. If the EBITDA is not according to the company benchmark or industry benchmark, we work on that. If the PAT is comparatively lower or higher than the industry benchmark, we work on that. If the revenue, another thing you should know, that in case of investors like VC funding or private equity investments, in the financial model and all, we talk about financial projection. But when you are showing your revenue for cost of production forecast and all. But in case of IPO, in DRHP, you cannot give your future projection. So that is a limiter. You have to talk about what you have actually done till this FY25. So the actual numbers will only talk. So this is the IPO readiness process. And once that is done, you have done your organization structures and everything. Now you will go for the due diligence. So as I was saying, that is legal due diligence, LDD. That is mostly done by CS people. They usually go through your legal compliances, whether you have certificate of incorporation, whether you have certificate of registration, whether you have any any conflict going on with your employees and all these things. FDD will mostly focus on your financial statements, in your financial performance of the company, how you have performed. If they are, I was talking about related party transactions. So how we do that, I will give you an example. For example, when it is mostly a promoter-led company, that is the owners are only the promoters of the company. So they what they do, they may be charging say 10 lakhs rupees per month as their salary. But just to show the profit at a higher level, they show it at a lesser amount. Okay. So for example, that promoter is saying that I take 5 lakhs per month. Or the other case also can be the case that in order to show less profit, to pay less tax, they might show higher salary they are drawing. That is, in case of 10 lakhs, they are drawing say 20 lakhs. So in that case, what we have to do, we have to check what is the industry salary range for that particular role in the market. If we see that the range is around 10 to 15 and that management people are drawing 20-25 lakhs per month, we need to add back the balance amount to the profit to arrive at the true profit figure. So this is one of the related party transactions which get adjusted in the financial statements. Is this clear, guys, how we are doing it or why we are doing it?
Means their action will be called as falsy to show the
Yes,
numbers.
you can say that. But a lot of people does this. So also you people, when you will act as investment bankers, you can't say anything bad about your client. Okay, you have to believe that my client is the best. Even though that company is going into losses, you will tell the investor that I have believed that my client will go, do very good in future. So I was told by my senior when I joined investment banking that you investment bankers are fascinating terms for salesperson. You are selling your client in the market, and that I believe a lot, because every time I sit in front of an investor, first I have to believe that my client is best. Then only I can convince the investor sitting on the other side that yes, my client is best, you should invest in that. So you people are going to join investment banking industry very soon. So you will also feel it when you people will be working on client facing role or dealing with the investors. So you also have to first believe that your client is the best. Your client has the potential to become the best, and then only you can convince the investors sitting in front of you.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So back to my due diligence. Business due diligence is basically what I was saying, that whether your hierarchy is properly maintained, what is the organization structure, there is a proper CEO as a proper CFO, everything is done in the business due diligence process. So till this step 2, guys, everyone is clear? We are on the same page?
Yeah, ma'am.
I want to hear a no or yes from everyone, guys, not a few people just.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now moving forward, guys, step 3, that is my DRHP preparation, which I was talking about. So in this DRHP, as Sneha mentioned about the contents of RHP, that is a limited part which we talked about. You can only list your IPO. And we, as investment bankers, help you to arrive at that point where the merchant banker will list your IPO. So the last step, that is the listing of IPO, that is done by the merchant banker. So when you people will, start your preparation for IB investment banking and all, well, in interviews, they ask you this question that are you looking for an IB role or are you looking for a merchant banker role? So in India, merchant bankers are SEBI registered firms and investment bankers are us, the advisor. So you have these 2 domains where you can, explore your opportunity. Okay, I will share my screen again. Let me know when you can see.
We can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, I will still zoom in a bit so that it is becomes more easier for you to understand. So this is a company, Vikram Solar. It is a solar EPC company based out of Calcutta. And if you go down, these are the table of contents, guys. First is the definition and abbreviation. Basically, when any investor or anyone who wants to go through this, they should understand the basic terminology, right? So these are already given here. You can go through this. The second part is very important. That is the risk factor. Whatever drivers are there that might affect the IPO or the business of the company or the industry. Third is the offer part, where the company is talking about how much they are offering, what is the fresh issue, what is the offer for sale, or it's a mix of both. Everything they will mention it here. The capital structure, what Sneha was talking about, the current shareholding pattern, what is the basis for the offer price. So there is a bid. Anyone here who go for IPO listing have invested in IPOs and all?
Yeah.
Yes.
I do invest in.
Right, Mrityunjay. So have you noticed that there are 2 price band? One is the upper and the lower price band. Say 103 to 107 is the amount that is given. When you are investing in the IPO, you don't know at which price the IPO will be listed. So there is a price band given to you. Say 105 to 110. This is the range. So when you will arrive at it, you will be given 2 options. One is at the cutoff price and another is at the price which you want to choose between these 2 price band. So if you think that this share should get listed at 107, so instead of selecting at cutoff price meaning the highest, in this case 110. So if you are feeling that it will be done within 107, so you can just type out 107 and you can apply to the IPO at that price. Okay. So this is the basis for the offer price. What offer price we are having and how we have arrived at statement of possible tax benefit, guys. So I was talking about the consulting part, right? So when you are going for IPO, how you can structure your capital to avoid tax payment. This is the part where this consult. Now, guys, about our company, about our company is basically giving you an industry overview, business regulations and all. Then you will talk about financial information, and then legal and other information that will come from the LDT part. Offer information, terms of the offer structure, offer procedure. These are like very normal. This is similar for. So this is basically the DRHP, guys. So I want you people to go through a complete DRHP after this, interaction. So you will understand what I was talking about, why it takes months. We take literally months to prepare this DRHP. Just a minute, guys. I think my screen is stuck. I will reshare it. Is my screen visible?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So 4 is filing with SEBI. Then SEBI reviews, disclosure and all, issues, observation, questions, which I told you. 5 is anchor investor presentation or QIB meetings. So anchor investor presentation meaning when you are going for IPO, if you have a good anchor investor in your capital structure that influences other public to invest as well. For example, in this case only for this company, this solar company, there is one founder, the KPI Green Energy founder. If you go to company's website, you will find out Faruk Patel. So Faruk Patel is the founder of 3 solar companies. One of them is KPI Green Engineering, and other one I don't remember the name right now. So he is becoming one of the anchor investor in this company. So seeing that okay, fine, Faruk Patel is becoming the anchor in this investment, other people will also join. So this is called the anchor investment. And last is the very important, that is the book building process that I talk about, like how you are going to arrive at the price which you are going to offer to the. 7 is shares are allocated to investors and listed on exchange. The last one is, after post IPO, the company usually goes through a lot of financial disclosures. Quarterly, they have to announce the reports, annual reports, quarterly reports. Then after the year end, they have to issue their annual report. There should be investors presentation and all. So everything, these are the post IPO compliance. Any doubt till this, guys? Anyone?
No, as of now.
No, ma'am.
Okay, can you explain a bit on the book building part?
So in the book building part, which I was talking about, is that there are a lot of methods which we use in order to arrive. One of the most most recommended method, I would say, that we follow is to do it through investors bid. So the QIP investors, that institutional investors who are there, the anchor investors who are there, they bid for your share. So the price band comes from there. So as I mentioned that there is upper limit, say 105 to 110, that is my price band. So this price band gets decided in those meetings. Is it clear?
Yeah, got it.
So now moving forward, guys, introduction
can
to
we
M&A.
say that?
Yeah.
Yes. Can we say
Yes.
that the prices are getting mainly decided by the QIBs? They are driven mostly by the demand of the QIBs.
Yes.
Okay.
So there is
And,
another
so-
concept, guys, gray market. Have you people
Yeah.
heard about that? So in gray
gray
market
market premium.
also, yes. So in gray market also,
Yeah,
investors are there.
we come to know where the IPOs after listing price, how much will it be profitable, right? It will open at what price in the market?
Correct. So that is also plays a little role in the IPO listing price and all. Yes.
Why sometimes the IPOs are listed at the price which offered to public are like 300, 500 times more than the PE. So we already know that we generally with what is 24 to 30 or 20 to 30 is a good multiple of PE. So why is this abrupt high PEs approved by SEBIs?
It depends on the industry, Abhi. It also depends on the total capital which is being invested, which kind of investors are present on the board, what is the use of the funds. If a company is going for an IPO just for their working capital needs, that is not a very good IPO to invest in. So that is the reason why you have to look into the DRHP, where they are mentioning everything about the IPO process, like why they are going for it, who are there as an investor. So focusing all these things, the PE multiple also. Again, some if you people know, there is another thing, that is market sentiment. So market sentiment also plays a role when the IPO listing takes place. So if you see Physics Walla, so it has raised like around something 3,850 crore or something like that as their IPO, and this is the first highest largest edtech IPO coming up in India. So if you see, like, people are little bit scared about the edtech industry, but when it came to Physics Walla, it is 3.7x oversubscribed. So how will you explain this? This is basically on the market sentiment. People are expecting that yes, this company is going to have a good this company can give us a good return. So on the basis of this, they are having those valuations and listing prices.
So
Okay,
that
okay.
you are saying that market valuation depends on the subscription by the people or investors.
Yes, to some extent, yes. See, there are a lot of reasons behind this. I just told you the most, what should I say, the most relevant reasons.
Okay.
Say, for example, if the IPO is getting listed in second quarter, and the first quarter results of that company have been huge, very good. So that will also have an impact on the IPO. There are a lot of reasons.
But SEBI does a due diligence, like they have a criteria of seeing the valuations also, right? So if SEBI
Yes.
is approving a valuation, that means they
Hmm.
have also done the due diligence at their part.
Right.
So the investors trying to invest in IPO, they can trust the RHP.
Yes, definitely. That is what I was talking about. That SEBI, it increases the brand credibility as well. So guys, now moving forward, why do companies pursue M&A? So these we have already discussed: market expansion, synergies, technology capability, talent acquisition, competitor consolidation. So all these are basically the different types of reasons why do companies pursue, or why do companies do the M&A. So in M&A deal structure also, we have asset-based purchase, share purchase, merger or amalgamation, joint ventures. So I was talking about deal structure. So I think Harshal talk about what can be the deal structure. So these are all the deal structures that can be possible. So whether it's asset-based, whether it's going to be a joint venture, whether it's a M&A, or whether it's an amalgamation, everything is mentioned here only. So anyone can tell me what is amalgamation and what is M&A? Can anyone tell me?
Right? What's M&A? Merger,
And
right?
what is amalgamation? Yes, the difference between acquisition
Basically,
and
two
amalgamation.
companies, two or more companies coming together to form a synergy.
Acquisition.
Right.
Ma'am, one company acquires another company, and matlab that the acquired company is loses its separate. I mean, it could be a subsidiary, but it loses its separate identity. At least supposedly, maybe it could be a separate. And merger is when two companies form together and they form like a separate entity, which may be having a common name, but then both the entities form together and they form some third entity. Like basically, it's the one and two entities come together and they form some third entity, which is a
Correct.
merger. Yeah.
In case of merger, the existing company might or might not stay. There is a chance. But in amalgamation, a new company is always formed. That is the basic difference. Any doubt?
Ma'am, can you explain the difference between an acquisition and an amalgamation?
Yeah, that's what we just said, that when it's an acquisition, the existing company might or might not be there.
Yes.
But in case of amalgamation, the new company will always be formed. The existing company will lose its existence.
So what is the difference between a merger and an amalgamation?
See, merger is same, like when two companies are coming and doing the process. Acquisition is when one company is buying another company. And amalgamation is a totally different, when two companies are coming to for merger, but a new company is being formed from that merger.
Okay.
Upma, getting confused between that merger
So
and
acquisition,
amalgamation.
so acquisition is a kind of takeover, right? One
Right.
company is taking over the other company.
Other company. Merger
Okay.
is two companies are coming to merge.
Got
Now, it might have the existing company or it might not. In case of amalgamation, surely it will not have the existing company.
Yes, got it.
Guys, in case of this buy side and sell side, we have already discussed. So I'm not repeating this,
Yeah, please
preparing
move on.
IMPSers and all. So I'm just moving forward.
So there is one more thing is like when an existing company itself breaks up into two companies, right? Well, that is also possible.
That is
Two separate
demerger.
demerger.
So guys, Jio is going for an IPO in the second half of H1, 2026. So have you people gone through this message and all, like this news and all? Do you people know anything about this?
Yeah, in news we heard that Mukesh Ambani ji has himself announced that he will be launching the Jio IPO in first half of the 2026.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So it is basically saying that they are going for a 30,000 crore IPO, and Jio is going to be the largest ever IPO in So before this, they went for another QIP round, that is a quasi IPO, you can say. They got it investments from very big investors like Facebook and all. So this is the news which I have, like the PR. I can share it in the chat so that you people can also go through this. So this is basically News India and Times of India and all. They have
So
shared it.
Facebook and Reliance deal was happened long back, right? Right in 2020 itself. Yeah.
Right. The valuation of 11.9 trillion, that is USD of 135 billion, that has been given by Motilal Oswal. Anyone knows what is Motilal Oswal? Yes, no. Motilal Oswal is one of the not equity research brokerage. Yes, brokerage platform. Motilal Oswal, just like Sher Khan, like this. Motilal Oswal. So guys, this is one thing. Enterprise value. Here, does anyone know what is enterprise value?
Yes, ma'am. Enterprise value is the total capital is the value of the firm which is calculated on with the total equity value, market capitalization of equity plus book debts minus cash. That is the net debt.
Very good, Ayush. So basically, enterprise value is the overall value of the enterprise as a whole that will have both the equity and the debt component. But when I'm talking about equity value, so there is a difference. Equity value will only talk about the equity component of your company. So this is the difference between enterprise value and equity value. And when we talk about multiples, while you will talk about financial, so there are multiples which we follow. So EV by EV multiples, there is one a very popular multiple. Revenue multiple is there, EV multiple is there. So EV is basically enterprise value. So EV by EBITDA, EV by EBIT, all these multiples will give you different angles to, analyze. So this is the enterprise value, guys. So the enterprise value of this IPO is going to be much bigger. It is saying that the valuation which Jio platform is getting is equity, that is 135 billion. So that means the enterprise value is having both equity and debt, and the equity is only 135 billion. And the equity plus debt is giving me a valuation of 151. Again, guys, if you see other brokerages like Morgan Stanley, Citi, Bank of America, they have given a range. So what I was talking you, that we always give a range, that 125 to 130. We don't tell them an exact number. So this is how you can see that the if you give the financial modeling to two analysts, same assumption, I would say same assumptions, I would say same business line, same projection period, same WACC and all, even though that the valuation number will come different, because the assumptions you are making, how you are projecting the revenue, that will be always different from analyst to analyst. So that is why we give a range of valuation to the investor. Is it clear, guys?
Oh, yes.
So if you know the ownership and shareholding, the Reliance is already holding 67% of it. Others like Meta, Google, there is, I think, KKR is also there. So they are holding the rest of the 33%. So this is the overall shareholding pattern of the IPO of Jio. You people know about KKR?
Yes, I know.
What is it?
A large very large private equity firm.
Correct. It's a very large private equity firm. Now, guys, risk. What are the risks we have? That also we do. This is basically I have taken it a case study how we have the IPO readiness. So whenever we are working on IPOs, we think like this only. Like what can be the valuation? What are the risks associated? All these things. So here, if you see, Jio is currently a part of Reliance Industries. So public investors may apply a discount, but the reason being the investors who are already invested in RIL, they may get a discount on the IPO price. Okay, because they are already the shareholders of the holding company. So that is why they might get a discount price on the IPO. If you have have you seen the Physics Walla IPO? Like how it has been
It happened
structured?
for Bajaj Housing Finance.
Right. So in case of Physics Walla also, it is not for investors, but it is for employees. So in case of LIC also, when LIC got listed, they have a separate section for employees. So they can get a discount on that. So if usually publics are getting it at say 100 rupees, the employees might get it at rupees 80 rupees. So this is the concept of discount.
So Upma, are we also going to cover the topic of mutual funds in this session or no? Just
No,
asking.
not today. Not possible.
Okay, so
Today
there
it's
will
only focused on IPO and M&A. Yeah.
okay, so there will be one more session maybe next week or kind of thing.
I'm not very sure of that. The
Okay,
ops team will
fine.
do-
Can we discuss as a whole, like for retail investors, what are the top 10 points that should be seen in the hearing prospectus? Like the main top 10 points: who are the promoters, the valuation, the net return on net worth, the factors which should be seen in an IPO.
Okay. Yeah,
Can we
we can
discuss
do
on
that.
that?
Just give me maybe 5-10 minutes. I will just
Sure.
finish it. And then, I will come back to this. So let's just be a little quick, guys. So that is the Pine Labs IPO. This is already done. This is a leading merchant commerce point of sale. So they are providing, what should I say, product payments, credits, reward points and all. And it has presence in India, Malaysia, Singapore and LATAM side as well. So LATAM side is basically the UAE, Saudi Arabia, this part. So this industry landscape, you are talking about IPO top 10 points. So you can have two things as the top 10 points. I don't know who was talking. I can't see. First is the company overview. You have to go through the company overview. You have to understand the business while you are going for an IPO. If you are an investor or if you are the person who is going for IPO, understanding the company and the industry overview is very important in case of an IPO. So if you see that the industry is already moving towards a matured stage, so you have to decide on that basis that whether you want to invest in that or not. So these two things are very important in case of that top 10 point. Okay, that the company overview and the industry overview. Then for this is another, I think this will only answer your question. So the third is very important, that is the pre-IPO fundraising, which I was talking about, that if a brand name, a good investor is already present on your capital structure before you are going for IPO, that influences the other people also to decide whether to go for the IPO or not. Okay, like Sequoia, Temasek, MasterCard, Actis and KKR is also there. These are very good brand names in case of private equity. So this can be another point on those top 10 points which we are talking about as your measure to determine the efficiency of an IPO or the profitability of the IPO. Again is very important. I already told you rationale for IPO, that why you are actually doing that IPO, what is the use of that IPO fund. That is also going to help you to understand whether you should invest in that IPO or not. This is the IPO structure basically, where it is getting listed, amount. This is the price band, guys, which I was talking about. Here it is saying 100, 500 to 700. So this is like that. And structure also, guys, if you see, combination of fresh issue and other follow-up shares as well. So basically offer for sale. So both are there, mix up. And this is one of the question which I would like to ask you people, that why this IPO was postponed. You people have any idea why this IPO was postponed? No? See, this IPO was planned way long back, and this was postponed because of three main reasons. One is that they were having operational loss, so the financials were not very good. Second thing, in the bank, the what should I say, the industry were not, that market conditions were not favorable at that point because of COVID and few other reasons. And third is, before going to the IPO, they wanted to globally expand a little more. So they focused on strategic expansion, they focused on financial improvement, and they waited for the global economy to be stable to go for this IPO. So this also becomes a part of IPO preparation process. When you as an investment banker is working on the readiness of IPO, these things you should keep in mind, that before taking my client on IPO, I should be ready with all these things so that my client can get the best valuation in the market. Is this clear, guys?
Yes.
I will do a quick discussion on the financial modeling as well. So we all know the different types of models. DCF, trading comparable transaction, precedent transaction, LBO models, M&A models, so all these things are there. In the DCF, we basically use DCF when we are doing for financial modeling for growth stage companies, and we focus on mostly comps when we are doing for startup companies, because DCF is more relevant for companies when it has stable future cash flows or past historical data as well. So in case of startups, we don't have that stability, so that's why we focus more on comps. In comps meaning peer analysis, so you are taking 3-4 competitors of that startup and you are doing that analysis. So these are the types of financial model. The 3-statement model is the father of all the model, I will say. So from every model will start from this 3-statement model. That is basically the linking of the 3 financial statements. So can anyone tell me what are the 3 most important financial statements?
Profit and loss statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement.
Correct. And apart from these, we prepare 2 more statements. Can anyone tell me what are these 2?
Statement of changes in equity.
Very good.
And notes to accounts.
And
We have notes to account.
no, notes to accounts is not statement, fund flow statement. Another one is
Okay.
fund flow statement. Yes. Now guys, these are mainly the drivers of model. When you are working on any model, you have to work on revenue schedule, that is a revenue projection. Then you have to work on the cost. So minusing cost from revenue, you will arrive at the gross margin. You will have to do an analysis of working capital, because if you are asking money from investors for working capital need, then you have to give that justification as well, that see, my total cash conversion cycle is 120 days, so my cash gets stuck and I need more working capital. So to arrive at those numbers, you have to work on this. Then there is capex. Capex is mainly will give you an idea about your depreciation, your total fixed asset and all. Then the future cash flow calculation. Can anyone tell me what is the formula for FCF? What do we use? No?
Yeah,
Yes?
so for the FCFF, we take first the EBIT, the post-tax EBIT into 1 minus tax. From that, we will be deducting the changes in the working, we'll be adding the depreciation. We will
Correct.
reduce the change in working capital,
Correct.
and the minus the net capex.
Yes, correct, Ayush. So NOPAT plus depreciation minus capex minus changes in working capital will give you the future cash flow. Very good. Then we arrive at the terminal value. So terminal value is what? Value is the value of the company beyond the future projection period. So basically terminal value, we arrive at terminal value using 2 formulas. There is one formula, perpetuity growth method, and there is another formula, that is exit multiple approach. Usually we follow perpetuity growth method, so we can have these in details later on. Valuation output is basically what we discussed, that is enterprise value and equity value. After you arrive at equity value, you divide the equity value divided by the number of total shares, and you arrive at the implied share price. So this implied share price is what? Basically the investors, if the share price is coming say 5 rupees, okay, that means if the investor is investing 500 rupees in your company, that means he is getting 100 shares basically. So the total number of shares multiplied by the share price will give you how much investment the investors are going to make, basic thing. So closing session, before that, guys, I wanted to answer that 10 components thing. I already believe I told you 3-4 points like the company overview, industry overview, what is the rationale for the IPO, if there is any good brand name present in the capital structure. Apart from that, you can also look for company benchmark, guys. So company benchmark by mean I say that if a company who is going for IPO, you can go and start, like for example, I showed you the DRHP for Vikram Solar. There are some other relevant competitors as well who have just listed for IPO as well. So you should go through their DRHPs as well, and you should understand that the valuation that they are claiming on the basis of the revenue they are earning, and the company which is going for IPO right now, what is their revenue and how much valuation they are earning, what is the basis of the valuation. These all should be a very important part when you are what should I say, you are determining whether to invest or what can be the return on investment or not. Does this answer your question? Who asked it? I don't remember his name.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you, Avi. Actually, we are short in time, so maybe we can have a detailed discussion on this later. So guys, I think today my part is done. So thank you everyone whoever joined today. On a Sunday afternoon, 2 hours is a lot, I understand. So for this, we have a gift for you all. So the course right now, if you are going to, what should I?
So
If you are
Upma,
going
this
to
okay.
just
So
a minute,
this
Mrityunjay.
yeah.
If you are going to purchase this course, so for all the people who have joined today, there is a 40% discount, as a gift for you all. So I think it is valid for today only. I don't know a lot about the other things, so I would request the ops team to take over and answer any questions the students might have regarding. Thank you everyone.
Thank you so much, Upama, for sharing such valuable insights with us today. I'm sure everyone here now has a clear picture of how IPOs and M&A deals actually work and what it really takes to build a successful career in investment banking. To all our participants, thank you so much for your energy and engagement throughout the session. This has really been a good session. Before we close now, I'd like to share an important update. As mentioned by Upma already, admissions for the Merit Shot Investment Banking Program are now open. And as attendees of this masterclass, you are eligible to avail a 40% scholarship on the program fee. This is, yes, again, a limited opportunity designed to help serious learners take the next step with ease. If you're looking for structured training, real industry projects, and guaranteed career support, this is the right time to join. If you guys have any program related queries, I'm here to answer all your questions.
Hello.
Yes, Vikas.
Hello, hi. So I have one question. In this program, is it guaranteed internship with JP Morgan?
Yes, this program is in collaboration with JP Morgan and with IIM Kashipur. So with JP Morgan collaboration, we are going to provide you with 3 months internship with them, where you do get certificate with JP Morgan, mentioning all the projects that you're going to do with them. Also, you'll end up with a decent opportunity where you can apply for their permanent employment.
Okay, and it is paid internship or?
That depends. I mean, that varies from candidate to candidate. We are not the right person to decide that. JP Morgan team, the mentors of JP Morgan, they go ahead and decide this, like whether it is going to be a paid one for you or not. Not everyone get the paid internship, but yes, if you're getting the paid internship, there are really high chances to get the paid internship where you can earn a stipend amount of 20,000 to 40,000 per month, and you only have.
But my program counselor said to me कि yes, this is confirmed guaranteed paid internship with JP Morgan.
Yeah, as I said, the internship is guaranteed, but it is being paid. How much the stipend will be, this will be decided by the JP Morgan team according to how many projects you have completed in previous 2 trimesters or what background you come from. They will decide your stipend then and there.
Okay, and this program is good for tech student. I am a IT guy. So
Okay.
I'm just asking, this program is good for me or not? Because I don't have any finance background and don't have enough knowledge of finance.
Okay. So Vikas, in that case, you don't have to worry about the curriculum or the learnings. There are a lot many people coming from different background. Okay. So before we dive into the core curriculum, we are going to build your foundation. We have fundamental classes prior. And after that, only we will get into the core curriculum where we will be studying all the modules and case studies and everything. In banking, yeah.
Then placement company will consider me
For sure.
after
Because
course.
see, in this program, we are not only focusing on the theories, we are focusing on the skills here. This is a upskillment course where you're going to learn while you're doing everything. We do have freelancing projects, we do have industry projects.
Okay. This is guaranteed placement like that, because my program counselor said to me that this is guaranteed placement opportunity.
Yeah, the
Means
upcoming
you
batch.
tell me, ma'am,
The
tell me.
upcoming batch is the job guaranteed batch, where along with your admission letter, we do share some job agreement with you as well. So this will be shared over your email, which will be signed by you and our CEO, Mr. Roshan Sharma. This is the reason we have
Okay.
added
And what
industry
is the
projects.
course?
Yeah, you've been asking
Okay,
something.
fine. Yeah, actually, I just want to know about program fee, because I'm joining this session. So
Okay.
can you tell me, please?
2,10,000 is the course fees, the standard fees. Over this, as I mentioned, 40% is the scholarship that you may avail, which will make your fees to come down to 1,26,000, I believe.
Okay.
Does this includes the IIM certification as well?
It includes everything.
Okay,
And
one more question. Do you have any offices in Mumbai location?
I'm really sorry, Mrityunjay, but right now we only have our office here in Noida. We are planning to have one office there in Mumbai. Maybe in 2026 we'll be there in Mumbai as well.
Okay, so my counselor said they will be opening an offices in Mumbai by Jan 2026. So is it a tentative date or it's a confirmed date? Because I wanted to visit the office personally and need to, talk about everything on detail.
We have actually been planning to have this office in Mumbai in 2025 itself, but that has been pushed a bit. So most probably by January we will be there in Mumbai as well.
All right.
Who will be the instructors for this program?
One of them you already have met here in the session. Another we have Mr. J.K. Nair. And the faculties are from IIM as well. I mean, we do have industry experts associated with IIM Kashipur as well who are going to teach you here. I can assure you one thing, that every faculty who are going to teach you, they are well experienced and well educated.
What is the course duration? And the course fee includes GST or it is plus?
Okay. Abhi, this is a 9 months online program and the course fees includes everything. You only have to register yourself, and you can take, if you want to know more about the payment options, if you're planning to pay at once, you can. Otherwise, you can take as well.
Like 9 months, what is the interval of classes? Is it only weekend or every day? Do we have options of selection?
Keeping in mind that majorly we have working professionals, the live lectures are going to be held over the weekends only, like only Saturday, Sunday, late evening batches here. So you do have 2 hours of class. You do get all the recorded lectures available over your LMS portal. In case you miss any of your lecture, you can surely consider the recorded lectures and you can arrange yourself a personal session, as mentors are available 24/7.
And we will get freelance.
Yes, in the second trimester, we have added some
Duration.
freelancing projects for you, where again you can earn a stipend
This is
of
paid or
10,000 to every freelancing project is going to be a paid project where you can earn a stipend of 10,000 to 25.
Okay.
Renu, what is an average CTC of an investment banker?
That depends. If I talk about a fresher, we do have a fresh graduate.
Let's say, for example, I am 5 years plus experience, but my previous experience is not into finance, into customer support and digital marketing and all. So if I opt for this course, and after the completion of the course, if the institute is placing me somewhere else, so my previous experience will be counted, or will I be considered fresher for this role? And again, I will have to start from the fresh CTC, or how?
Mrityunjay, you will surely be considered as an experienced person because you
Yeah,
have a
because
working experience.
because
Maybe.
this is the main problems people are facing. Let's say, for example, I'm applying for a company, so they are asking me for their relevant experience. So if they are not counting the relevant
Okay.
experience, they will consider me as a fresher, and they will also pay me as a fresher. So this is what main problem is.
Okay, so Mrityunjay, here at Marriott Short, we have added this internship, industry projects, your case studies, just to make sure that you're gaining that experience before landing up for the like real job. So this is to make sure that you are actually doing the industry project. You already have the practical knowledge. So every single project and internship that you're going to perform with us will be showcasing over your LinkedIn and your CV. So this will be done by our placement team only. Like in the placement bootcamp, we will surely be providing you with career services, your resume building session, LinkedIn profile optimization, your mock interviews. Only then you will be going ahead for the final interview.
Okay. And
Anyone else? Do we have?
in the website it is mentioned if the merit shot fails to place a candidate, is the fee refundable?
Yeah, this is about the job guarantee. We have been discussing a little earlier when someone mentioned like what exactly job guarantee is. So this is what I meant. Along with your admission letter, we share some job agreement with you, some sort of document which will be signed by our CEO, Mr. Roshan Sharma, and by the candidate. So we promise you to provide you with a job.
Okay, and what is the time period that is given to a
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
what is the time period after the completion of the course? What is the time period that is given to a candidate to apply or to place a job?
This program can be extended for another 9 months or let's say 12 months. But I said 9 months and 12 months because your placement bootcamp, however, will start in the last trimester along with your. So we will be in the preparation for the job interviews, and right then, when you're ready with the mock interviews and everything, we will start your placement thing as well.
Fine, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Do
hello.
we have? Yeah, yes, Anu.
Yeah. See, well, I have totally 17 plus years of experience in banking industry. So I thought of getting into investment banking field. So that's the reason I have explored this program. So what is my question is again the same thing like who asked before, whether I will be considered as the mid-level or because already I have handled a few of the branches and was a branch head in a couple of banks. So how my career will be once if I get once if I complete this course, what will be the scope of this program? And one more thing, I'm looking for remote because some family moments will be there. So that's the reason I'm opting remote jobs. Is that be possible?
So, Anusha, did you mention that you're from banking? So, are you from retail banking?
Yeah, retail banking. I work
Okay.
for
So,
HDFC.
okay. Anusha, there are a lot many people who are coming from banking domain because please don't in banking now, like after a certain point of time, growth feels quite stagnant. So investment banking is actually a growing domain where you can explore more opportunity. And yes, you will surely be considered as an experienced person only. You have almost 2 decades of experience, which will surely be counted. And banking, like investment banking and banking, they go hand in hand. So this is not like we are changing everything, but we are adding some skills to your like already the skill set that you have. So it's more like you're upskilling yourself. You're not like changing your domain like from BTech to banking, but from banking to investment. Jahan pe you do have some basic knowledge, and we are just brushing up, and we are upskilling you for the things like valuation technique, financial modeling, risk management, your merger and acquisition, as discussed here in the class. So yes, you will surely get some decent position and hike.
And one thing I mentioned, no, the remote opportunity.
Yes, though 60% of the jobs are remote online in investment banking, this is actually the best thing. And every project and internship that you're getting in the program, we are providing with remote opportunities only. So you may get some decent remote opportunities as well.
Hi, good afternoon.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
hi. I'm really
Hi, good
sorry, I
afternoon.
couldn't get the.
Vipin Sharma here.
Yeah, yes, Vipin.
I'm having one query. See, my background is from insurance, right? Life insurance and health
Okay.
insurance. So after
Uh-huh.
completing this course, 9-month course,
Hmm.
so it would be count as a fresher experience in investment banking.
Again, what background you come from, you have gained certain, I would say, experience, which will surely be counted in insurance as well. You are pitching the other person for something, right? You are
Yes.
actually the face for your company. You're actually like convincing people. So here on the bigger panel, you're going to do the same thing with our guidance, with the skill set. You will have to, just abhi class maybe we have been discussing about the merger and acquisition. You will have to encounter the companies. You will have to pitch them what exactly your company is expecting, or what do they have to give. So again, we will be teaching you, and yes, you will be considered experienced only.
After considering experience, so what will be the starting salary, CTC?
Okay, if I talk about a fresher, I really don't know about the salaries here for people. So let's talk standard. If I talk about a fresher, let's say someone just have completed their graduation or post graduation. If they enter an investment bank domain, so they get started with job positions like entry level investment banking, business analysts, like analyst roles, equity research, operations. They get a salary of 6 to 10 LP in the starting. So now you can get an idea what package you are working at right now, how much experience do you have, if a fresher is getting 6 to 10 LPN, how much you can expect. Investment banking is actually a growing domain, and there are a lot many opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So how much it will take time to get the placement after completing course?
It totally depends on you. We will surely be aligning your interviews. In the last trimester, as I mentioned earlier, your placement bootcamp will start. And once the things are completed, you are done with your mock interviews. We will start like placing you, or we will start aligning your interviews with companies.
So after getting placement, means what will be the time means working times hours?
That totally varies from company to company.
Okay, it would be means a rotational shift or general shift and all.
I'm really sorry, Vipin, but I may not be able to answer this question because working culture or the timings or everything like that depends or varies from company to company. Maybe if you're working with JP Morgan, they have a different working culture, or if you're into Citibank or HSBC, for instance, so they have a different working culture.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ma'am, who is the highest recruiting partner so far?
Anusha, we do have tie up with Big Fours as well. We do have alumni who are already working with EY, JP Morgan, KPMG, PwC, Deloitte. So we have multiple partners here. So I cannot name any particular company that they have the highest ratio there. But yeah, with JP Morgan internship, you'll end up with a decent opportunity where you can apply for their permanent internship. If I talk about the ratio, 4:10 is the ratio for that.
Reno, is it possible to have one more session more because I wanted to know some more knowledge on mutual funds, fund manager, and equity manager kind of thing, risk analyst. So is it possible?
We have not planned any such session, but if you want, I can ask your counselor. May I know who's your counselor so that I can ask them and we can arrange a personal session for you?
My counselor was Jatin, and he was reporting to Muskan Nakpal.
Okay,
So
understood.
I am in touch with both.
Okay, I'll talk to Muskan and I'll ask her to arrange a personal session with the mentor for you. You can ask all your questions there. Do we have any further queries?
Ma'am, did all the candidates got placed in the previous batches? What's the placement percentage?
87% is the placement ratio for the general batches. When it comes to the job guaranteed batches, we are providing job opportunities to everyone. But Anusha, I need you to understand that not everyone is looking for a job here. We are providing placement opportunity to the people, yes, for sure, because this is something very important to us as well. Not everyone is looking for a job. because there are people who are already at CEO, AVP, VP, director kind of positions, and they are not looking for any hike beyond that, but they are looking to upskill themselves. Then comes CAs. Like we do have CAs who are practicing since last 25 years. They have their firms and everything, but right now they are here to gain the knowledge only, because accounting and finance, they go hand in hand. It's more like, why to go ahead and pay someone else if I can learn this? So it's more like this. So there are multiple people. Some people are doing this for their business only. So yeah, not everyone is looking for job, but for everyone who are looking for job, we are more than happy to provide them with a decent opportunity. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Guys, we are taking questions for more like 4-5 minutes. At 1:20, we will close this meeting, and you can ask your questions by then.
No question from my side.
Okay. Barkha, shall we end this, as if I think we don't have any further questions?
Yeah, ma'am, we can end this.
Sure, sir. Barkha, are you here in the session?
Yes, hi Renu. Guys, if you have any other question related to course or how the program is going to be, you can ask so that you get a better clarity. If not, give a thumbs up so that we'll be able to understand that you have better understanding.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and have a wonderful day. We are looking forward to welcome many of you to the program. Thank you.
Ma'am, I have already registered.
Okay.
When I will get the credentials and the offer letter, admission letter, and
Sandeep, let me check with the team. I will surely ask the operations team to get back to you.
Okay.
Barkha, shall I leave?
Yeah, I guess only there's one question related to the English communication. So Vikas, a basic understanding of English and communication skill will be required. You don't need to be very fluent with the language, but at least you should be able to answer the question that would be asked in your interview.
Okay.
But at the same time, company will be looking more into your skill set than your language or how you speak.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question. That is enough for me. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Okay. I think we can wrap up the session. Thank you so much for your time, guys.